Please welcome our esteemed panel today. And actually, just based on the question, I'm going to start with you, Catherine, if that's
Wonderful.
okay.
Right.
If you have not seen it, Catherine was just recently on the cover of the Lodging Fourth Quarter magazine for 2015-16. And in that magazine, she talked about a lot of the new initiatives affecting our industry in 2016. With that said, Catherine, we just learned through your introductions that you're all deeply rooted in the hotel industry. Let's talk about that. What do you feel are the biggest challenges and some of the opportunities facing our industry today?
So, you know, for those of you that are on the hotel side of the business, I don't have to tell you. This is a time right now of unprecedented challenges, really coming at the same time. Labor and employment, a great deal of uncertainty, rapid fire regulations coming out of the National Labor Relations Board, the Department of Labor, the list goes on. I would tell you that we expect them to continue throughout 2016, really at an unprecedented rate and with serious and long-standing consequences for you and your team members, their ability to move up that ladder of opportunity and live the American dream. We can talk a little bit more about those later. Unbelievable consolidation in the online travel agency marketplace, right? Expedia and Priceline, those two companies alone now dominate 95% of the US online travel agency market. What that means is we are also seeing a correlation between the amount of consumer deception that's happening, individuals who think that they're booking direct with a hotel when in fact they're on a rogue third-party site. Showing up at your front desk without a reservation in many cases. Again, a lot more on that we can talk about. And finally, some of the newer entrants to the marketplace, particularly around Airbnb, but also you see this on Booking.com and others, where we are seeing a sharp rise in commercial landlords, commercial operators, who are effectively running lodging 360 days a year, but without paying taxes or dealing with the safety and security things that you all do to keep your guests safe, without adhering to the zoning regulations, without having proper insurance. The list goes on. We just rolled out a study. We showed that in the major marketplaces across this country, 40% of those on Airbnb, 40% of the revenue comes from commercial landlords who operate on a completely unlevel playing field with all of you. So serious challenges. The opportunities are great. I'll touch on one, but I know that Carol and Dawn will certainly add to this. And that is what the good Lieutenant Governor talked about with travel and tourism. Last year alone, 72 million international travelers came to the US, generating $220 billion, right? Great initiatives going on right now to grow that travel safely and securely here to the US and to facilitate certainly travel within the US. And that's going to be great news for all of you and your states.
Right. Dawn, how about you? What do you see in the restaurant side of it? What are the biggest challenges that we face today in 2016 and certainly some of the opportunities that we have?
I would say the fundamentally largest challenge we have, again, Catherine certainly touched on it, the Lieutenant Governor spoke of it, is the labor challenge, is being able to attract and retain the workforce that is necessary to propel, in our case, a $783 billion restaurant industry in this country that today employs 14.4 million people, growing middle-class jobs at a rate 4 times faster than any other segment of the economy, but at a time when our typical entry-level employee, the younger, less experienced worker, that part of the demography has shrunk dramatically, so there just aren't as many young people to put into our pipeline, and older individuals coming in and out and back and staying in the workforce longer. So I would say the labor challenge for us in the restaurant industry, front and center, very, very significant, coupled then with a very challenging, as Catherine was saying, regulatory environment with no particular end in sight. It's hard to say what happens after 2016, but we know for sure through 2016, if anything, it's going to get more challenging as the president attempts to push through some things that he wants to get done before the end of his term, and challenges in terms of paid sick leave, in terms of the whole NLRB issues, scheduling, mandates, all those kinds of things that make it extraordinarily difficult to be the flexible industry that we need to be, that offers the kinds of opportunities that we can offer. So I think all of those things kind of put together creates just an extraordinarily challenging environment for an industry that is creative and resilient and able to weather lots of different storms, but it's reaching, I think everyone would agree, a bit of a tipping point in terms of, is it even possible to be successful in this challenging environment? And I think our industry feels it. I know our restaurant community definitely feels it. And we, as an industry and as an association, are working very hard to do the things we can do in this environment, which is we have made a lot of progress in terms of tax issues and progress where we can help the industry from a profitability standpoint there. Other things we can do on the wage side. But the biggest challenge, I think, all of that having been said, and this will be a good segue for Carol, is that so much of these issues are moving to the state and the local environments. And so while we have a lot of federal things that we're working on, particularly in the next 10 or 11 months, there's very little that will happen at the federal level as a practical standpoint. But the ballot initiatives that will be added during this presidential election cycle to not just states, but cities, municipalities, all across this nation, that is kind of the new frontier now that we're all trying to navigate together, and it's extraordinarily challenging.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And ladies, thank you for all that you do every day fighting all these challenges for our industry. It's actually a perfect segue, Dawn, into my next question, which I'll bring right over to Carol, of course, who will answer it, I'm sure, perfectly. What is the current legislative climate, and how does it impact our industry? I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, and certainly, Dawn, I think you made a great point that it's becoming bigger and bigger every day, but maybe you can give us some more of your insight and certainly how we can play our part.
Sure. Thank you, Mary. Well, first of all, you've heard it. We're in the middle of our legislative challenges. Most of you know that we've had very, very successful, 2 decades of successful legislative years. And you know that I don't like to lose. So trust me when I tell you that this TDT, the Tourist Development Tax that was mentioned, is our #1 priority outside of course, our funding for tourism. But it's a challenge. This one is being, is pushed by the leadership and in some form, and it comes down to what the Lieutenant Governor talked about. Sometimes it's just easier for local government when the funding gets tight on certain services to blame our tourist. And so we want to say that, first of all, just as someone mentioned earlier, remember the sound bites that as we bring 100 million tourists into Florida, then that increases sales tax revenue. So our debate in the legislature right now is, why are you taking our money that was self-imposed, intended for marketing and advertising, to pay for, we all believe, law enforcement and firefighters, and they're obviously wonderful services, but our sales tax revenue went up. We pay 25% of the state's economy as it is now. So use the increased sales tax dollars in your local government to pay for those. So just to take a snapshot, that is our immediate challenge. And so I'm pleading with you to go back and send your emails, calls to your local legislator expressing your discontent with this piece of legislation, because it is just the beginning if it passes. Right. So.
Excellent. Thank you. I couldn't agree more. That's great. Thank you, ladies. So I think we're all here today because of the exceptional panel that we put together. So we want to know a little bit about you all, ladies. I know I do. So I'm going to ask some questions in reference to your career and where you all, how you all climbed that ladder, if you will. So I will start with you, Dawn, if that's okay. Did the course of your career follow a specific path to where you got to today? Or did you have to go off-road to get there?
I definitely went off-road, and I think I still am off-road most days. I would say I would phrase or call myself maybe the accidental CEO, meaning it wasn't my path. Didn't set out to become the CEO necessarily of anything. But I did set out very early in my career to make an impact, to really try to make a difference in anything that I had the opportunity to work on. And I would always be willing, and I frankly still am, to do the kinds of things that aren't necessarily fun or the kind of, I've spent a lot of my career doing the things that need to be done. And I think a career, much like restaurateurs and hoteliers and those of us that are in this field that we're in of service and community building, much of what we do is about giving back. And so I would say along the way, I would always find myself in situations where I would see something that needed to be done and I'd be willing to jump in and do it. And to this day, I would say that's a big part of what I do. So not necessarily following a tried and true path to say, I want to necessarily climb the ladder. That was not my goal, but my goal was to have more and more impact. And as it turned out, those two things eventually kind of coincided. And in order to have more impact, you have to take on more responsibility. You have to be willing to lead teams. You find that your own individual performance is much less important than the performance of the people with and around you. Being able to galvanize and attract and retain great, talented people. And that really has been the path, I would say, that has led me in the direction that I've been. I've been in 4 different industries over the course of my career. Started in food, went to the electric utility industry, worked for AARP for several years, and then came to the restaurant industry, full circle. Restaurant industry, hospitality. Can't ever imagine, once you're here, you never want to leave. This is the most magnificent, wonderful, supportive, tremendous industry that there is. I don't think anybody leaves this industry if they have a choice, and I can see why. I just absolutely adore it. I feel like I finally have come home, and this is for sure the right industry for me, and I just adore the people and the opportunity to be of service.
That's great. Here on the industry, and certainly you definitely made an impact, so you've reached your career goal, in my opinion. How about you, Carol? Tell us a little bit about your career path.
I wish I could tell you that it wasn't a plan, but if my husband were here, he would quickly start chuckling, because he says that from the day I was born, I said I want to be the head of the, at that time, either Florida restaurant or hotel. I grew up in the industry. I went to Florida State, got my degree in the industry. But what was funny is I'm a person who doesn't believe in coincidences. So I believe that everything had a plan way before I knew it. Somebody much bigger than myself did. And so as my career went on, I would look and think, why am I here? What does this have to do with being the head of the Florida restaurant or lodging? And we're going back, I graduated from Florida State when I was 20. I lost my father when I was quite young, so I didn't have the luxury of, lollygagging and having a 6-year degree, like my daughter's doing. I had to do it. I'm glad she's not here. Don't even tell her I said that. I love her dearly. So I ended up out of college with the beer industry of Florida. I represented them for 10 years, and trust me, numerous times I'd go, okay, I know there's a lot of beer in the industry, but what does it have to do with the price of coffee? And little did I know, learning Chapter 561 under Florida law and knowing the alcohol laws backwards and forwards and the history that I have from 37 years ago has never left me. And then as I went on, the governor appointed me head of the hotel and restaurant division, and of course I kind of started thinking, good, this is, and then boom, I'm deputy chief of staff for the governor, and I'm thinking, what does this have to do with that path? Well, our lieutenant governor, I can tell you respectfully that behind the Wizard of Oz curtain, yes, it is true that the people change, but the process doesn't. So once you know what goes on behind that door, you take it with you the rest of your career. I've always known how to work behind the curtain. And then we lost the election. And my good friend Tom Gallagher called me and said, my husband and I had had a house fire. And he said, I want you to be the first woman fire chief for the state of Florida. And I'm like, fantastic. Tell me where a fire hydrant and me rappelling off of a building is gonna have anything to do with my ultimate goal. You all know how much fire code and firefighters and how much it has to do with the hotel and restaurant industry. I have been on the front lines of fighting firefighter codes my whole career now. So it really was, and then finally, I guess God just got bored of moving me around, and he finally said, let her have it, give her the job. So, and then who would have ever imagined that it was the Florida Restaurant Association that I ended up, but then over time, I was blessed enough to end up with the merger happening. And so, like Dawn said, you never leave once you're here. I've told my staff, you're stuck with me. Just put me a rocking chair out on the balcony, because that's this is where I plan to retire. And I love it. I love this industry, but I truly did have it in my sight. So I probably would have been a very, very disappointed waitress somewhere one day.
Well, thank you for sharing, and certainly lucky us for you for staying the course. Catherine, tell us your story, please.
So I am originally a Texas girl who always had the political bug. One of our former governors lived right down the street, Ann Richards, very famous. My politics today may be a little different, but she, very young in life, taught me to sit up straight, to have an opinion, right, to listen, but then to always speak up. And that love and passion for politics, much to my parents' chagrin, meant that eventually I rented a U-Haul truck when I got out of school and tried my first job and said, I'm gonna go up to Capitol Hill. I'm gonna get this out of my system for 2 years, right, and come back to Texas, which 23 years later has never happened. Listen, my career too has taken many twists and turns. But the common denominator through all of it has been, even in this dysfunctional time, a love for public policy, a love for serving, a love for driving smart things forward and getting them over the goal line. And the tactics change. I've done it for many different industries. I am still fairly new to the world of hotels, but certainly what I share with both Carol and Dawn is an immediate love and passion for who I'm working for. And I think the ability to bring outside lessons, most recently from retail, and how we got Amazon to collect sales tax, how we beat banks on debit interchange fees, how we reined in labor when we needed to bring those lessons here to this industry to be much smarter and more proactive, but most importantly, more effective.
Wow, that's amazing, and we thank you for all the work that you continue to do for us every day. Now, this is a question that I'm dying to hear the answer. So these are powerful women. I mean, they run amazing organizations and associations, but how do you balance it all? I'm trying to figure it out myself, so whoever wants to start with this, please tell us how you do it, because I want to learn from you all, because you do it so well, obviously. Tell us how you balance your personal and your professional lives, ladies.
That a long time ago I've decided that balance was not my goal, but so I looked away from balance and I looked toward harmony. And that is my goal now, is not to strive for balance, but to strive for harmony. So that not just on a monthly basis or a yearly basis I can look back and say, I think I made it all work, but I've got to make it work pretty much day by day. And there'll be 2 or 3 days here where you're on the road and you're traveling and you got to take a pass, and then you get home and then you got to kind of get that harmony back in balance. But I would say it's got to work for you pretty much every day. And if that means calling home, since my son was 2 years old, I have talked to him every single night of my life on the phone, no matter where I am or what I'm doing or what important people I'm having dinner with. I excuse myself, I step out and I talk to him. Some days he wants to talk for 2 minutes, increasingly as a teenager, sometimes it's a minute. Some nights he wants to talk for 45 minutes. Something happened, he needs to have a conversation, and I will step out of a business dinner of whatever magnitude it is, for whatever time it's required to have the conversation that he needs to have. And I've done that now for 15 years. And I would say just that is, at the end of the day, you've got to know all these things we do in our lives are important. Certainly being a parent, being a spouse, being a daughter, being a sister, those are all really important, as are being an executive and a leader of an industry and all the things that we do. But I would say I have finally come to a place where I feel that harmony is what I'm striving for, and not every day, and sometimes not even every week. But in the aggregate, in the big picture, I feel like I've found a place. And the thing that ends up giving it is yourself. You know, you just have to be willing to let a few things go. That I used to sweep the floor at midnight if the floor needed sweeping. Now, you know what? It can go for a week. If it needs to be swept, somebody else is going to do it. I'm just not going to worry about it. They have to let things go, and that's been a big part of it for me too.
Great advice. Catherine, how about you?
So, as Dawn said, we started off our day talking about this very thing. I've got 3 children. They're 11, 10, and 8. So life is busy, and similar to what Dawn said, I really some days don't know how we do it. I joke all the time that I feel like we hold life together with duct tape and paper clips, But somehow you just embrace the chaos. And I am very fortunate, like Dawn, to have a husband who's got a little bit more flexibility, certainly not the crazy travel schedule that I do, who really is the linchpin. My in-laws live right down the street from us. That makes a world of difference. And at the end of the day, much like Dawn strives for harmony, to me it's all about being present. So when I'm at work, right, I try to be very present to take care of what has to be dealt with. When I'm home with my kids, I finally have gotten to the point where I leave my phone in the car. I walk in and I'm completely present with them, because you learn, right, it's quality time. And the conversations and the interactions and the give and take we have, because I am so present, is in many cases more tremendous than when I had a little more time on my hands. And so again, I consider myself, it's a wealth of blessings, and it's one day at a time, one step at a time.
Great advice, thank you. Carol, how about you?
Many of you know my husband, and at one point, he received a political appointment under a governor, and that was when we couldn't do it. The kids were little. We had a 1-800 number run into our house, so I had 24, 7 day a week, 365 days a year call when you work for a governor. You all know what that's. So I remember the two of us sitting down, and the blessing was, he said, I hate these political appointments. And so he wanted to step down, so he said, let me step back to another career that was no travel, much more of an 8 to 5 environment, and he could be there for the kids, and he knew that how much I love what I do, and he has been by my side every step of the way. And I'm proud to say that after 37 years of marriage and 37 years in this process, we've been together 40 years, so people who say it can't happen, trust me, it can work. You have to want the harmony and the balance. You have to strive for it. It is a lot of work. But he retired 18 months ago, and it's so ironic because it was right about the time I remember packing a suitcase and thinking, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like, I looked at the schedule, and it was, 14 days on the road, and, and God love all you hoteliers, we love them, but sometimes you just want home. And he retired, and he was only going to take a 6-month sabbatical because the way our laws are written in Florida, he had to take that to go back. And in that 6 months, he traveled with me every day, everywhere I went. And at the end of 6 months, we both sat down and said, it's a quality of life. And now that I'm in that last stretch, he's at the Fontainebleau sitting in the room right now overlooking the ocean.
Good for him.
He goes with me everywhere. And if the kids need me right now or immediately, I can say, call your dad real quick and I'll call you as soon as I step out. So, we just have a great partnership, and it's been a great support system. And
That's
thank
great.
you. Thank you for asking.
He really is a wonderful gentleman, and I hope he's enjoying his stay. That being said, it sounds like these ladies are giving us all some advice, I think, that we know, regardless of male, female. It sounds like we have to select a great partner to help us in this wonderful industry. So thank you, ladies. And reaching that harmony is not easy, but together we can do it and lift each other up and support each other. Talking of supporting each other, I'd like to hear the ladies tell us a little bit of advice, or some advice that they would give somebody entering this industry for the first time, or somebody that's considering leaving this industry perhaps, or maybe somebody that is, on the fence about what it is to take it and make it in this industry. So, Carol, if it's okay, I'll start off with you.
It's the one lesson that I am trying to teach our children is never burn a bridge. Ever. If you want to survive I don't care if you're an elevator operator or you're running a beautiful 5-star hotel on the beach, you never burn a bridge. Even in the times of frustration, you find a way to try to get through it with the most respect and grace possible. And the reason is because that little adage that everybody says is true. The bridge that you burn today, trust me, now that I've lived long enough, I never thought I could be up here and say that you will need that bridge one day to cross back over. And so if something is dealt in your life that's not, exactly the way you want it, then try to get out as gracefully as possible and continue to be a leader and move on and don't burn back.
Great advice for everyone in every industry. Dawn, how about you quickly? What advice would you give someone in this industry?
I would say in any industry, but especially in ours, because it is so challenging and there are so many forces on any given day that are kind of railing a bit against us. I think resilience is an incredibly important quality. And like you, Carol, I'm trying to teach this in my own family, and I try to practice it myself. And I think I always think about that toy. I had one when I was little that was like that clown that you'd hit it down, and it was water weighted at the bottom, and it would bounce right back up. Mine was a clown. My brother had Batman, but you punch it and it comes right back up. That I think is a quality. There's so many days and so many times in any given day where you feel like you have to be able to bounce back up, even if it doesn't feel easy and it doesn't feel good and you're not really ready to do it. That resilience, I think, in a leader especially, is incredibly important.
Excellent. Catherine?
I think I'll take a little bit of a different approach and say, don't ever be afraid to make the changes you need to make. It can be scary. It can be daunting. But at the end of the day, better to try, and then if it doesn't work out exactly like you plan, come back and have the discipline to tweak and fix. We went through rapid fire change at AHLA, and in 2 years, in our 100-year history, we have tripled membership, tripled revenue, quadrupled our PAC, right? Continue to come back and tweak along the way. But again, when you have a vision for something, follow your gut and make those changes that have to be made.
Great advice, and congrats on the success. So very quickly, ladies, last question, I promise. The first thing that you think of, what are you most proud of? Dawn, let me start with you.
Most proud of people who have advanced in our organization, in our industry, due to their own hard work and perseverance and resilience, not resistance, no, that's not good, resilience. I would say I'm most proud of people in our organization that I've seen evolve and come up in the organization. And my very, very most proud moment is when we hired a young man by the name of Yaya, who is in our office services group, who has Down syndrome in our organization. And I watched the culture of our organization in a 24-hour period turn. Wow. Like that. Yaya is the person I'm probably the most proud of, because this young man comes to work every day with the most positive attitude. He's a role model for all of us. Everybody adores him. He does his work with perfection and excellence, and he takes such pride in what he does. And I love to see people who take pride in their work. And so that's what I'm most proud of, is people who I've been in the presence of and during my time in the organization, who have advanced due to their own hard work.
That's a great story. Catherine?
It's actually very similar. I was going to say it's the mentoring. I was very blessed to have fabulous mentors, men and women leaders, young in my career. And that ability to give back, whether it's someone young on our team, whether it is someone outside, certainly, of AHLA, or whether it's my own children, right? To help them through, to help them chart that course, to teach them, again, one day at a time when it feels overwhelming, when you are trying to balance active children, marriage, friends, work, make it all work. And so it's that ability to stay calm and focused and hopefully impart a little bit of wisdom while I learn from others.
That's great. And Carol, what are you most proud of?
My team.
That's awesome.
Really simple. I again am probably the most blessed CEO in the world, because there are probably very few who can say that out of my senior staff, the bulk of us have been together over 25 years. I've got people in the organization that, we started our careers together, and I know without a doubt that probably a gift that somewhere along my career I was given is to learn how to never micromanage them and let them grow and let them do. And I truly just have the best team, and every day, I seldom publicly, every time I get a chance publicly to tell them, and I know this is one portion of them, but those of you who are here, make sure the rest of the staff knows that you are our rock, and you are where the rubber meets the road, and I'm the proudest of anybody because I have the A team.
That's great. What a beautiful way to end our questionnaire this afternoon. I know that we could ask them 100 other questions and we could be up here for hours, but unfortunately everybody, as always in our industry with time constraints, we all have to head back to work. All right, so we're going to wrap up if that's okay, so we can, in the essence of time, but again, a heartfelt thank you, ladies. It was certainly a pleasure to meet you individually and collectively, and yeah, I think your words here today and certainly your advice resonated with each and every one of us in this industry. We appreciate your time and taking the time to come out of your personal and professional lives to travel to South Florida. I'm glad the sun came out for you, and what an exceptional panel of a talented, wonderful ladies. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Once again, that concludes our luncheon here today. A huge shout out again, as always, to our friends in Jungle Island. They did a great job. We appreciate everyone being here and for attending this wonderful powerhouse luncheon today. We'll see you at our next event.